All right, welcome back to the channel, fellow human light beings. This is Mahadeva the Thunder Wizard, and I am here with Allison Holley,
Yes.
and she is also an experiencer. And as you know how I am, I really want to be transparent, you guys, with my experience. And I found somebody online that I don't know that sounds a lot like my experience, and I really wanted to share that with everybody. So, welcome, Allison. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Michael. And so what do you go by? Can you repeat that?
Mahadeva.
Mahadeva. Okay,
Yes,
thank you.
that
Beautiful.
is my spiritual name.
I
Um,
love that.
yeah. So let me get my audience caught up here. This was a while back, and what ends up happening with me, and this is, well, in case you don't know, maybe you know my history, maybe you don't, maybe somebody's new to the channel. Okay, so 2.5 years ago, I did CE5 for
Hmm.
the first time, Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, human initiated contact with extraterrestrials. And I, I really went after it hard
Yeah.
because I didn't, first couple of times, even though I've got crazy video and audio now, at the time, literally it was just bouncing off of my head.
Mm.
And I wasn't seeing or feeling anything. And I then um, reached out as best I could. I'm a spiritual practitioner, meditator, blah, blah, blah. And I said, whoever's out there, I'm willing to do this even if it kills me. I want to take this as far as it can possibly go. And I didn't know what that meant. I thought I was going to get, abducted on it. I thought all kinds of crazy stuff that, we've been taught. And um, I ended up getting communications and visited daily. It's been going on for 2.5 years by higher dimensional beings from all over the place. Higher dimensional beings, extraterrestrials, gods, spirits. I mean, they just opened up the whole universe and things got even crazier. I won't get into that. But ever since then, what has happened is I've really questioned my sanity throughout this.
Mm.
And so even though the experiences have continued and gotten more intense, it's been very hard for me to, look for support out, in the YouTube verse, because my experiences, the kindest thing I can say is I don't relate to the vast
Mm.
majority of people who claim to be doing this kind of thing. So
Yeah.
hearing somebody like you that when I was listening, because I can tell, it sounds really egotistical, but I can tell almost immediately if
Yeah.
somebody's having the same experience. And I
Yeah.
had that experience from you. So I reached out to you because I was like, man, I need to connect with somebody. I need to connect with somebody that's, in the same, going through the same stuff. And especially when I heard you say that you were an
Andromedan.
Andromedan.
Yes.
Because and bear in mind, I never believed in any of that stuff. I thought it was
Right.
absolutely, totally, utterly ridiculous. And that's what I was told early on, that I was
Mm.
an Andromeda. So I went,
Oh.
fellow, a neighbor. And so I'd love to hear your story, especially if you would please tell us about. I'm really interested in what you said, that this is your first time here as a human.
Yeah.
And I'd love to hear, I just got hit with energy as I said that.
Mm.
So I'd love to hear how you came to learn that, and then whatever relationship you connected with that energy, and how did it end up to where you are now, where you're now, opening up and channeling this energy to people. Please, I'll now
Mm.
shut up. Please.
Um, I mean, first, I just want to mention that, like my heart is so happy right now to meet you and to be in this energy because it really is, it's just so nice. It almost makes me emotional. Um, yeah, because it is a different experience. Each of us have a vibratory tone and a template. And to meet others who have such a resonant template. It always just, I'm so grateful for these moments.
Mm, me too.
Um, yeah. So, and similarly, if 12 years ago me had heard current day me, I'd be like, you're so weird. Can we have a normal conversation? And now, it's definitely my normal conversation. So, but my experience is that I went through a really powerful transformative awakening in 2012. And at that time, it was like a psychedelic journey for several months. So it just hit me all
So,
at once.
so I just
Yeah,
want to clarify something. So when you say psychedelic journey, you don't mean that you took psychedelics. You mean you
no,
had
right.
like a conscious waking psychedelic journey. Okay.
Yeah,
I
it was,
relate.
yes, yes.
Please continue.
It was the picture behind you plus sacred geometry and all of the feelings. So, in fact, I had very, very little. I think I had previous to my awakening, maybe, I mean, I couldn't even drink alcohol. I never smoked marijuana. These were things that I just couldn't really tolerate. Um, and, in terms of psychedelics, I like previously done mushrooms once and it was just recreationally. So no, this was not based on taking anything. This was everything sort of blowing open. So it was the experience of my third eye and my crown and upwards really just blowing open.
Mm,
Um, and that happened as a result. I like to tell people why, because I think a lot of people crave this sort of experience. When they hear about it, it can be activating, like, oh, I want that.
mm,
It happened spontaneously for me, but we call it spontaneous. It was the appointed hour, so to speak. It was the result of a relationship ending, which caused a sort of an emotional experience for me, which took my mind offline, off of the repeated pattern long enough for things to blow open. So we could say that it was because of a relationship ending, but really it was my time.
yeah.
And so what that felt like was I did start spontaneously channeling at that time. I also was having visions. I was having moments where time would warp, so time would speed up and slow down. I was seeing symbols and number sequences, as many people do, but it wasn't like a cute, like, look, 777. It was, I would see 777 and I would have to pull my car over because I couldn't drive. It was hitting me
Mm,
so strongly. It would create this sort of hyper reality where things would vibrate very strongly. Um, Things didn't seem real, they would warp. I remember one time I was with friends after it was sort of a group of people who were going through awakening experiences, and I didn't even know to call it that at the time. So we were, gathered together and we had a pretty cool meeting. And then afterwards, a few of us went out to dinner and something in my vibration shifted to the point that I'm sure my eyes were like so big because my friend asked me what's going on. And I was just staring at the rest of the restaurant and nothing was real. And it looked as if the walls were paper and I could blow them away. There was
mm,
nothing solid about this reality for a few moments. And some of those experiences were really, really powerful. So I kind of had to shut down the life that I was living. So I had my relationship end. I had a business that I was running that I, sold. I had all of my relationships, um, kind of let them go. And I remember at one point asking, because I started meditating and channeling at that time, and I was communicating with my grandmother who had passed away. She was the first person. My first experience channeling actually was mediumship, which is very rare for me at this point. But I was speaking with my grandmother, and she was guiding me through. I was like, why are all these people leaving me? Because it was every person that I'd interacted with, it was as if they couldn't see me. I was really at a different vibration point than the person that I was just a few months previous. And so she said, they're not leaving you, you're leaving them. And that
Mm.
was really significant for me because that's happened a few times since then, where again, my vibration would shift and things are always shifting. But in these human forms, we have so many attachments and we want things to continue in a way that's comfortable. So I've always remembered that they're not leaving you, you're leaving them, which was my vibration was just shifting so rapidly that people really couldn't see me. I'd be standing amongst a group of people that I'd been friends with for a while, and there was almost no recognition of me even being there. And I think that is just a sign of, vibration being very different.
Wow. So they actually like didn't even, when they thought about the event, you weren't even there.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it would be me standing among people, and let's say a month previous, we'd all be talking about the same thing. And then I go through this big awakening and I'm standing in this group. I remember several times that this happened because I had several social circles. I was really active. I was in a dance troupe performing, and I, had a business where a lot of people would come in. And so it was a big part of the community. Um, and I remember standing in circles with people, and everyone would be talking. And it was as if they didn't see me. So I'd be
Mm.
standing there, but there was no interaction with me. There was no recognition or asking, what I thought of the situation. It was truly like I was a ghost in my former life. Um, and I'm hoping that that really makes sense because really what it was, I've read the Celestine prophecy. There's a really cool part of that book where people are vibrating at such a different tone that they physically disappear. Um, and I had that experience, but I didn't physically disappear, but it was as if I wasn't there at all,
Mm.
you know? And those were significant moments in my awakening, to where, we always have choice, but there almost wasn't a choice but for me to go fully in to these new experiences. And you know, I didn't want to disconnect from the people that I knew and that I was familiar with and that I loved. Um, but they weren't going where I was going.
Yeah.
And where I had awakened to felt more normal than anything that I had previously been living. I finally felt this is familiar, this is home, the way that um I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I feel that people like you and I are sort of like, oh, I miss that feeling. I miss that like home feeling.
Mm.
Um, and it felt so much more like home
Mm.
than my previous, existence.
Yeah.
So I kept going. I was exploring consciously channeling where it had started spontaneously. And then I almost immediately afterwards, I met someone who resonated as a twin flame. I've
Mm.
developed a lot of understanding about that since then. But it still feels very much like it was the twin flame experience. So we got married almost instantly. We were together for 4 years, and we would practice going into this channeling space together
Mm.
daily, so just sitting together in meditation, listening, deeply listening. That's really what channeling is. And I heard you say something when you reached out and I watched your videos. I was like, yeah, we're definitely, resonating because um, channeling to me is listening and then reporting what I'm witnessing, what I'm
Yeah.
hearing, what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
That's I struggle using that word because, it's been used in ways that I just don't.
yeah,
Yeah. But what I saw you doing, I went, oh, she's doing the same thing I do.
yeah. Yes. Yes. And I think that can be really helpful to tell people too, because this concept of channeling where you completely leave your body and another being comes in, It has a few different effects that I've seen. One is overall, both effects that I've seen are disempowering to the larger collective because what it does is, um, and this is a real experience for a lot of people. So I'm not discounting that,
Yeah.
but it's not the only experience. So it puts people on a pedestal to where it's like, oh,
Right.
that person is a channel,
Right.
and they can do it and, tell us the answers.
Yeah.
And the other thing that it does is it disempowers the person who's channeling. A
Yep.
lot of people ask me, who are you channeling? And I say, well, I'm going into the higher vibration realms. I'm connecting with the higher version of myself, the higher frequency version of myself. And from there, I can see more beyond my ego.
Yeah.
And that's what I bring back. That information is very clear. And the higher in dimension that I get, the more clarity and removing from my ego that I can get.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm happy to hear you say that. I was really before this, I was just gonna keep my mouth shut because I'm very opinionated. But yeah, I have that same experience as well with when it becomes like an identity thing. Because my experience, and obviously, light beings are people, they can do what they want with, however they want, and they're all different. But my experience is uh, they're not interested in me saying the Lord so and so is saying this and I am his, that it just they
Yeah.
I don't experience that at all. They're just like anybody else. They're
Yeah.
people. And
Right.
it's one thing to do that, and it's another thing to be on the phone and somebody says, "What does he say?" Well, so and so says this. Oh, they said they'll be
Yeah.
right over. That's
Yeah. It's
channeling.
that.
I'm just repeating what he said. I'm not like letting him take over my body. I will be there at 7 o'clock.
Right.
And I agree 100%. It
Yeah.
devalues everybody because the people listening, whether they realize it or not, are being, coaxed into feeling like they don't have any value. And here's this
Right.
being that's bigger than them. And then the channeler, like you said, the channeler can't say, hey, here's my thoughts and my
Yes.
feelings. They're
Yes.
completely farming out all of you know, their integrity out to some other being. And then, like you
Yeah.
said, it's like, well, then it has to be right. And so
Right.
everybody's in this weird, pseudo religious thing where we're listening to God as
Right.
opposed to having an experience of communicating with people, which is the only thing about it that is not like 3D for me, I don't know if it's the only thing, maybe one of the things that's not like 3D is the energy of it. The energy of where these people are is
Yeah.
far more intense.
Yeah.
And there's different properties to it, than 3D. But other than that, they're no different than me.
Yeah.
None of them, not even the gods. They're just in a higher plane. But in terms of they're just people. That's my
Yeah.
experience in here. And I say that because it was completely mind blowing to me.
Yeah.
Because it's not what we're taught and it's not how we're, programmed to buy the experience of 3D to think. So
Yes.
that was really tough.
Yes.
Anyway,
I've looked at this. No, I'm with you on that. I've looked at this in channeling a lot because I have met people who do channel in that sort of way where a being comes through. And what I've heard is that a lot of the population does still need that way of perceiving it. And the messages that are coming through are full of love.
yeah,
Um, and and it's necessary for people sometimes to still hear that. Um, so I recently published a book. It's called Ecstatic Playground. And one of the concepts in there is this outsourcing to a God outside of ourselves and the reluctance that each of us have to feel that we are embodiments of God because which makes sense, in this human form, we have a lot of what we would call limitations and for a purpose. And I know that you know all this. I'm really saying this to sort of bring my viewpoint on it.
Please do.
But yeah, it's we have so many limitations that we think, how could this be God? But those limitations are for a purpose. It's so that we can have this incredible, limited, separate
Yeah.
human experience, which we don't have in our God form, which is the all.
Yeah.
And there are gods, right? So there are gods, and then there is the all. And
Yeah.
so the confusion around all of that makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah.
Um, and we do want to separate ourselves still from God. So we do it, and I talk about this in Ecstatic Playground. We do it with government, we do it with healthcare, we do it with our parents, we do it with our social structures of any kind, we do it in partnerships. How can I somehow not take all of this feeling of responsibility of I'm God, I'm the creator? Like, who can I give that to?
Mm, exactly.
And I mean, I do it all the time. I catch myself all the time doing the same thing. I'm not exempt from this, but I am witnessing it. And it's this particular era that we're in as a human collective. Many of us are coming into witnessing ourselves as God, not in the ego self,
Right.
but in the complete self, which includes the ego self and
Yeah.
includes all of these different dimensional being or spaces that we inhabit
Yeah.
as the all that we are. So, but yeah, that desire to other our power is really strong because it's kind of scary to experience this level of separation. Like, it's a lot, which
Yeah.
is why, when I have these conversations with you or other people where I'm like, oh, thank you. Uh, that feels good because it is a lot to kind of feel like we're out here by ourselves,
Yeah.
which is an illusion, but it feels really real.
Yeah. So before I forget,
Yeah.
why don't you share with people how they can find you, website, books, just, go ahead.
Okay, cool.
Big
Yeah.
advertising for you. Tell us about you. How
Thank you
can
so
people
much for
find you?
that. And I'd like to do the same if I
Yeah.
post this elsewhere. So you can find me on my website, AllisonHolley.com. I'm, active on a lot of different social platforms as well, and that's all linked on my website. I do have two books. They're available on Amazon. The most recent is Ecstatic Playground, and that's really how to start playing as creator gods on earth with this powerful ability that we have, letting ourselves have that and understanding how to play with it. I kind of refer to Doctor Strange a lot when I talk about that book because we're learning to play on that level at this point. And all of the reasons that we don't play and what makes that so difficult as humans. And then the first book that I wrote, and all of this is that channeled information. So the first book that I wrote is The Era of the True Creator. And these books are essentially, I would go into intentional channeling and vocalize it, then transcribe those notes, and then compile all of that and put it into these books. So that's kind of my book writing process. Yeah, I think that's it. I have a live stream that I do every Sunday here on YouTube on my channel, where I go in and I offer a channeling for the collective. So that's a fun way to kind of connect. And there's a really beautiful community of people who are, yeah, so loving that gather there. So I like to talk about the incredible community that I get to connect with. Yeah,
Awesome. And correct me if I'm wrong, but Holly is Holley.
correct.
So
Yeah.
AllisonHolley.com. And is that the name of your YouTube channel as well?
Yes, Allison Holley, Awakening Guide, I believe is what it is.
Okay.
Do you like how I
And
don't know? Yeah, just look Allison Holley, you'll find it.
okay. I
Yeah.
will I'll try to remember to put links in the bottom of this video so that people can find it.
Cool.
Yeah,
And
so let me get mine out of the way because
yes.
I'll forget otherwise. So Thunder Wizard at YouTube. So you can just go to YouTube and then just put at Thunder Wizard, all one word. Thunderwizard.com is my website, which has all kinds of subscriptions and teachings and energy practices. And there's a shop. People can buy videos. And I have books, Michael William Denny, DENNEY.com. And you can find my books on Amazon. Extraterrestrial, the two having to do with this stuff, extraterrestrials are coming to Earth and interdimensional revolution. I've got a bunch of other
Mm,
books about all kinds of other spiritual stuff, but yeah, that's anyway. All right. So
I love
business.
that.
All right.
Thank you.
So I'm interested in your experience and maybe, in your knowledge or your memories, and it's okay if you don't have them,
Yeah.
because I might be asking stuff, you know, that we may not remember yet. But I know that I've been on Earth from the beginning, even though I
Mm,
am also from Andromeda.
yes.
Um, and actually, light beings have come. It sounds so
Just say it because you're in good
typical,
company.
but Pleiadians came to me and recently
Yeah.
started telling me who I was in a previous life, which was
Mm,
absolutely mind-boggling. But what was important about that wasn't that I was getting this telepathic message of who I was. What was important about it is there was a bunch of emotions that came out.
mm,
And I wouldn't have believed it if somebody told me. And in the
yeah.
past, they were telling me, like 2 years ago, they were telling me telepathically things, and I was like, "Oh, okay, if you say so."
Yeah.
But then when the emotional memories started coming back, I said, "I can't. This is so deep. There's no way I'm making this
Mm,
up." So I'm interested to hear from you about how you found out you were from Andromeda. Do you have any memories about that? Do you have any memories about how you decided to come here, what your purpose is? Take
yeah.
it.
Oh, I'd love to hear more of your story sometime.
I,
Um,
yeah, I'm happy to share it.
yeah. Um, so I somehow always knew that this was my first lifetime. So I actually grew up, excuse me, I grew up Mormon. And in that religion, they don't believe in reincarnation. It's everybody's a first timer. Um, but even with that upbringing, there was something in me that knew that I was not familiar with being a human. Like I don't know how to describe it. It's just something that I always knew. I always felt like the way that I describe it is if you were born in France and then you moved to the US and you lived here your whole life, but something in you always knew that like your family was really in France. Excuse me. That's how I've always felt. And even being younger, sort of using the languaging of like being a human's kind of weird and feeling that. And this is
You mean
before.
like speaking instead of just telepathically communicating?
Yeah, yeah. Well, also, you know how it shows up the most for me is like, well, I've thought of it. Why hasn't it happened yet? Right? Like, shouldn't I also be able to move anywhere that I want to? Shouldn't I also be like limitless? There's this limitation that doesn't feel familiar to me.
Yeah, yeah.
It's also the separation in terms of love. Really like war. There was a feeling of this place is incredibly violent. And I'll say I'm not a vegan or anything like that. It's been really important for my body to have meat for several years. That being said, the feeling that we would need to eat at all is somehow didn't make sense to me. I was like, wow, everything about this planet is like this experience is violent, including eating plants. Why would I need to take something else in? Why is destruction a part of this? It actually a huge, in fact, I would say most of my awakening not only has been channeling and opening up that way, but most of my awakening has actually been grounding and learning to trust the earth and the processes here. Stories, ugh, stories were like awful to me. Because the feeling in me was I'm going to forget who I am. I'm going to forget what I came here for. I'm going to do what everybody else has done and just get caught in this crazy repetitive cycle.
So let me
Um,
stop you for
yeah.
a second. I'm a stickler for language. So when you say stories, what do you
Mhm.
mean by that?
People getting caught in stories as if they're real. So a story from what I view it as is a viewpoint that we have created as reality and then perpetuated. So we tell the same stories.
Okay. I
You
just
know,
wanted to be sure you weren't talking about reading a book.
right, right, right. Yes, the stories of like my personality and the stories of what happened and um it's much more existential than that. When I feel into it, it's like, oh, the story's like, no,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
So it's a bit hard to explain, but
Yeah, I
yeah.
appreciate that, and I wanted to highlight that because that's been really important for me as well. I use
Mm,
similar language, but you know what people on my channel hear me say it over and over again, even in meditations, that our 3D personality is a fictional character that our soul has written so that we can interface with 3D, and
yeah.
not who we are. They're just reactions in a story. And as long as we believe the story, we become method actors and we forget
Yes.
who we are.
Completely.
And the idea is to be able to play the game while still remembering who you are.
Straight, literally a page out of my book. The So yes, yes, I hear you. And it feels so real when we're doing it. It feels
Yeah.
so real when we're doing it. Like all of this still feels very real to me, even as someone who works in these energies daily. Yeah, life feels real to me, of
Yep.
course.
Yep.
You know? Um, so there was just always a knowing that I was a first timer. And when I went through my awakening, oh, and previous to going through an awakening, I worked with someone who offered a past life regression to me. Um, and I remember telling her, I don't think I've been here before. And she said, well, let's just go in and see what we find. And several human past lives came through. And I remember in the experience, I was like, yeah, I'm seeing these things. I really feel them. Um, but I was shocked because there was just a knowing in me that I hadn't been here before. But I had these past life regressions. I really saw through their eyes and felt through their experience. Um, and so that was interesting to me. So fast forward to the awakening experience that I went through, and then the when I went into practicing channeling. I remember I sat down. I had moved back in with my parents, as so many of us do when we go through an awakening. And I sat down on the floor. I still remember, and I was like, okay, I'm going to go in. I'm going to channel. I'm going to ask where I'm from. And immediately I got Andromeda. And I was like, oh, wow. Okay. I thought that that was someplace out of a storybook I didn't know. Um, so I said, well, I'm going to roll with it. I'm going to go with it. And I said, okay, what do we look like? What do we look like in this place? And I saw a very tall, to me, it's so, so, so beautiful because it's like, that's my soul. Very tall, what we would consider tall, blue, just infinite love.
Mm.
Like I remember after that when I would see deer and the way that deer look at you, just like this beautiful, I
Mm.
was like, that's what it felt like.
Mm.
So deer always reminded me of my Andromedan family. Um, and I was shown different things, the particular color of blue, the way that their hands looked. how they had sort of like longer fingers. And it was just interesting. I don't remember all of the details, but I do remember as soon as I came out of this channeling, running to Google and looking it up. Is Andromeda a place?
Wow. Wow.
And I saw, yes, it's a galaxy. And then I started looking up Andromedan starseeds. At the time when I channeled this, there wasn't actually pictures online that matched what I was seeing. So people were showing Andromedans as something different. And I don't remember what people were showing them as, but it took about 3 years. I looked it up again, and people had started showing blue beings that looked very loving. They had like sort of these almost, yeah, like these really
Like
beautiful,
almost triangular looking.
yes,
Yeah.
with the big eyes and just
Yeah.
just absolute telepathic love, just infinite love. Is this what you see as well?
Yeah, I do. I'm not very visual. I do see things. Apparently, I'm verbal because I get a
Okay.
lot of telepathy. But and the other thing, which was absolutely necessary when this guy showed up,
Oh, yes.
and I don't know where he's from, but he was the first. He had to come because I was so dense. The other beings couldn't get through to me. And
Yeah.
I even had this, second time I was doing CE5 and I was asking, and I started having like this fantasy, oh, I'm having a
Mm,
fantasy. And I was talking to these, what I call moon people, and they were short beings with pale skin and they were bald, and it looked like they
mm.
were wearing turtlenecks
Yeah.
and they were really happy. And I'm like, would you guys like to come and talk to me? And they said, we can't. You're
Mm.
so guarded, we can't get to you.
Oh,
And then they said, and they're of course they're all happy. They're all happy.
right.
And so we're gonna send the big guns to crack you open.
Whoa.
What?
That sounds intimidating.
Yeah. So and then there was some other stuff that was like I saw like like animal signs and things like that that were telling me they were gonna crack me open. And
Mm.
so I did it a third time, and my experience was nothing's happening. I had that fantasy, but that doesn't mean anything. I'm making things up. And this guy shows up, and but the point I was trying to make was that he connected me to some, I want to say spirit tech, like some
Yeah.
kind of higher dimensional technology, because I get jolted. I get
Mm.
jolted, and so I think they spent like months coming to my house at night, during the day and at night. I'd wake up in the middle of the night and like my leg would be up in the air and being twisted around. And, it
Mm.
wasn't like I was possessed or anything because I was filled with all this blissful energy, but they were clearly beings. I closed my eyes and I could see them, open my eyes, I can't see anybody. And they were hooking me up. And ever
Mm.
since then, it's like, and people are used to it on my channel. I go, I just got hit with a bunch of energy.
Mm.
And I've been meditating and doing Qigong and
Right.
really high level energy work my whole life, and nothing like that. So
Yeah.
my experience is that I do have some visual, a lot of energy, and then I have to sometimes really listen and participate and interpret what's being said.
Yeah.
And I had very similar experience to you, which was, I would get this word or, phrase or something, and I'd ask a question like you did, and I'd get an answer that would sound just fantastical, like I just pulled it out of a storybook. And
Right.
I did what you did. I said, okay, that's interesting. And then I'd go look it up.
Yeah.
And then after I looked it up, I realized there's no way I could have made that up.
Yeah.
There's just no
Like,
possible way.
and also why? I mean, I understand people who haven't had these experiences themselves, um, feeling that's weird. Um, but I guess the curiosity that I have is, well, I don't really, I mean, I've got a great imagination, but I don't really understand why I would make up that story,
Yeah, yeah,
know?
no, yeah.
So,
And this is, you know, my experience again is that for me, I believe that it's higher dimensional. They're in another dimension, and by
yeah,
dimension, I don't mean what
yes,
most people mean, which they mean they really mean another three-dimensional universe, which isn't the same. It's the
No,
third dimension is a
the
box.
layer.
Yeah, but higher dimension means they have, it's not just up, down, left, and right. There's
Right.
also other directions we can't
Yes.
comprehend. And the energy is, far larger, and the emotions are far larger and more intense. So a communication from them the first time around, it shatters you.
Hmm.
So and this is again how I know when somebody's having a real experience, because if they claim to be communicating with beings and they're, the vast majority of it is this big ego rush, I'm like, you're not having the same experience as me.
Yeah.
The weirdest thing, like you said, they'll come to me, and it's gotten, 2.5 years later, it's gotten so fantastical that I still, I thought I told everybody on my channel everything, and they said, okay, good, now you're ready for more.
Yeah.
They start telling me, who I really am, and I'm just like, there's no way I'm going to tell this
Uh,
to people. There's just no way. But you'd think when somebody comes and tells you, oh yeah, you're the God that created the universe, you
yes.
think like it would make, but it doesn't. It just like,
Yeah. You're
and
like, what?
you're,
What? Yes.
and it feels like you're dying, because you're dying to the story.
Yeah.
The story that we're these little beings, and we're, everything's outside of us, and we're full of sin, and none of the, all of
Uh,
that story, which makes the third dimension work.
yeah.
It
It
doesn't
has
work
to.
without that.
Right, right. It doesn't. It doesn't. And which is why we kind of have like little or large breakdowns when we experience this, because then the third dimension stops working for a minute. And then, it's sort of like, okay, we've got to becoming multidimensional in our consciousness is
Yeah,
like it's a really, really powerful game to play
yeah.
as humans, to be able
Well,
to go, through the dimensional spaces.
yeah. So my latest strategy is I've just decided to believe everything,
I love that.
and that wasn't easy for me to do. It's still very challenging
Mm,
and very, painful sometimes, but um, I've chosen to believe everything that they're telling me, and then I act on. Like,
yeah.
for instance, people on my channel know this, but I do these live guided meditations at least twice a week. And what they've told me is, you, meaning me, you are changing reality.
Yes.
And it's not a meditation. And you are the only one that can do this thing. And it's your job to go and reprogram the third dimension. And if you don't do it, nobody's going to do it.
Yeah.
And
And
I didn't really believe it. I just went ahead and started doing it. But now I'm forcing myself to believe it. And you would think that it sounds so egotistical, me saying that. I would hear that. And it's not. It takes
it's not.
tremendous, humility for me to just allow myself to believe that.
Right.
It's the
Right.
opposite of what we would think.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I relate to what you're saying. Anyway,
Yeah. I really hear that.
yeah,
I do. I had a similar thing recently where I was teaching, different manifestation techniques, and I was trying to explain callings and things like that. And I said something to the effect of, you know, I've got this great calling and purpose and everything, but I could disappear and somebody else would be embedded with that calling. And immediately my guides were like, you know, like you, it was like, I was like, oh, I have to correct myself right now. My guidance team is telling me like, each of us were literally, every aspect of us was built exactly for what we're here to do. Nobody else can do it. And everything is perfect and divine and shifting all the time. So I hear you on that. Um, I want to share the other thing of my soul journey
yeah, please.
that I've discovered, which is how I came to being human. Um, when during one particular channeling, I think this was a couple years into my awakening, I went in And usually I just go in with like what questions around whatever's going on in my world at the time or things that I'm curious about. So it's pretty open-ended when I'm channeling for myself. And so I went in with that same intention, and in some roundabout way, it came up that it came through incredibly strongly, um, that this was my first lifetime here. And I was like, I knew it. I knew it. And so I asked, well, what about these past life experiences that I've had? And that's when they told me, Allison, you're so empathic for a purpose. You're so highly absorbative that you actually lived and experienced other people's lifetimes because you were looking for them. So you need to be very aware that this is something that you do. So I've really learned how to differentiate sort of my frequency. And when I'm going in, now I have medical intuitive abilities and things like that, because it's sort of like in the Matrix where they plug you in and you learn Kung Fu. That's what being empathic is for, right? We think it's like, oh, I'm so empathic and I'm feeling your pain. It's like, no, you're empathic so that you can have all of these powerful experiences without having to have a bazillion lifetimes. So that's why I am so empathic. It's like, well, your first time here, let's load you up with some experiences. Let's give you
Ah,
some fascinating things to like know. I like
that
now I know what it's
makes,
like.
yeah, that makes sense because, otherwise, if you don't have any human experience whatsoever, it would be probably, I mean, horrifically difficult to function in this
It,
society.
it
It's not like
was.
you're born in some hunter-gatherer society where
Yeah,
you
yeah.
just like, oh, a plant.
Right.
So it's sort of like you had like training. You went to you're going to go to Earth. Let's get you trained up. Here's what it's like to be human. It was sort of like that.
Yes. Yes, it was similar to that. But really that's the way that I sort of move through the world, is very absorbative and empathic. And I feel things deeply and I experience it if somebody's telling me their story. If I At this point it's very conscious. I would go in and actually, and I've done this. This is a fun experiment that I've shared with other people. Say that you want to learn how to make money. Well, have an empathic connection with someone who's incredibly wealthy.
Mm.
Run that through your body, see what that's like. Like you want to have that experience, you can have it at any moment, and you can actually connect with someone who has had that viscerally in their lifetime, and really download those codes. So that's a lot of fun. But in this particular channeling, I was also shown why I decided to be a human. And what it was is I was told that in my non-human form, I worked with the Anunnaki beings. And there's still a lot that I don't understand about this particular aspect of my soul journey. But I came to Earth, and what I was told was I came to Earth not in human form, and I worked with the people who are considered the Mayans in that region, and I helped them develop the Mayan calendar, is what I was told,
Oh, wow.
which I never would have guessed. This was one of those moments where during the channeling, I was like, no way, just like, shouting, like, that's crazy. Like, I was so surprised. I love when I get information that surprises me so much.
Yeah.
And I was told that I fell in love with the earth so much, and I fell in love with people here so much that I wanted to come back during the 2012 awakening and assist with the changing um, that we're experiencing right now. So I still look at that like, that is so cool. I just fell in love with Earth. And I was like, I want to come back. When this cycle closes out, let me come back with those activations for the party. you know? So yeah,
Well,
so
that
that's the
that
experience.
that leads me to one of my questions. I'd love to hear your take if you have one. If you don't, that's fine. So there's a lot of talk of the Ascension event. There's a lot of talk of splitting of frequencies, different Earths, solar flash event.
Mm.
I'd love to hear your take if you've gotten any information on that.
Yeah.
I'm
A
listening.
lot of information.
Oh,
And
good.
also, it feels like almost none, right? Because there's so much going on.
Hmm.
So, the second channeling experience that I had was visionary, meaning spontaneous channeling when I first started going through my awakening. And the spontaneous channelings were so strong. Both times I was in my car, I had to pull over. And the second channeling, it was a vision that was so strong that I'm just sitting there and I was watching all of this unfold, and it was really powerful. But I saw flooding, and I saw a lot of flooding, particularly in this vision. I saw flooding on the west coast of the US, a major tsunami event that really took out just a huge amount of the west coast, upper west coast. That being said, I really feel that so much is shifting, and these um there's just infinite possibilities, but also that's this is where I start to run out of words for how to explain being able to see just sort of infinite possibility, because it could show up in so many different ways. But the larger congregation of energy is that we're going to have a lot of flooding. Um, the next 2 years are going to be really, really, really actively transformative. The way that it looks on Earth could look like a whole bunch of destruction, or what we call destruction. But if you look at it the way that the Earth works, like if a tree breaks down and falls down, and then it takes however many years to decompose, what we're doing is we're sort of like compressing that. So if you watch a tree decompose and you fast forward that, and we're like, oh my God, look what's happening. It looks like crazy fireworks or whatever. But really, it's just the natural process of things breaking down so that new things can emerge. So the next 2 to 3 years are highly compressed. We are going through like a major, even individually and collectively, sort of this feeling of compression, in that old patterns within, like, they need to go because we're being compressed. Um, what I have seen in terms of the flash of light that I've heard a lot of people talk about is more, um, I actually tend to see. So, what I've seen is that the sun is sending out lots of solar flares, and the earth, it's very much like this almost sexual dance between the sun and the earth, and the sun being this masculine sending out, it's like, when I look at it, I've tuned into this energetically a few times, and it is so beautiful and like just almost erotic. Honestly, I'm going to use those words. I know it sounds kind of weird to put those words to it, but it's like the sun is like sending out these beams, and the earth is like, yes, just dancing in it, right? And us poor humans, the way that we experience that is the earth is like hurricanes and floods and like earth changes, but the earth is dancing and receiving these powerful beams of light. And of course, the sun and the earth both being multidimensional beings, it's not just the physical sun sending out solar flares. It's the sun, which is far bigger than I can understand at this moment. You might have insight that would be really cool for me. It's the sun and its multidimensional presence sending out cosmic waves of awakening to the earth. And the earth is just receiving, receiving, and shifting planetarily. So the way that a lot of people I've heard interpret this are, that it's like a massive solar event that essentially causes a blackout. The part of that that I have picked up on is the 3 days of darkness, but this is also very much coinciding with my own personal awakening journey, which is I my awakening started right around fall equinox, and then went through this high peak, and it started to move into this deep level of silence that hit right there at the winter solstice, and then the 3 days of pause after that. So it's hard for me to sort of differentiate with all of these visionary experiences how it's going to play out. But one thing that I know is there's sort of a collective bracing, like we can sort of feel the next couple years are going to be pretty intense. I could look at it further, but that's what I've received so far.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I do have a lot of thoughts about the sun. Of course, I could, happy to share those.
Yes.
I like what you said about that being like a sexual dance. And again, I hope people understand where I'm coming from with that. Um, what I've learned about the sun is that the center of the sun is feminine, like the part that
Oh,
does
wow.
the
Okay.
um, nuclear fusion, because the hydrogen molecules get fused and then they explode and they create all that light. That is feminine, which is like many of the ancient gods, like in the Norse, call the sun a goddess. They call her Sunna. She's a goddess.
Wow.
And if you look, the farther back you go in time, shamanic people will call the sun feminine.
Okay.
But the rays are masculine.
Yes.
And so the word Ra, which is the
Yes.
king, and even in Sanskrit, Raja is king. So the masculine energy comes out. And in fact, what's interesting, you wouldn't think this, but the surface of the sun is cooler than the rays are when you go further out. It becomes even hotter.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah, so it's like it transforms into this masculine energy. And, the moon, we perceive it, now we perceive the moon as feminine, but the rays of the moon are feminine, but the moon himself is masculine.
Wow. Okay, I'm getting so excited. I can I interrupt briefly?
Of course.
So one thing that I have seen, for whatever reason, I saw a black hole in a channeling space, and I saw that the inverse of a black hole is
Yeah.
creation spewing out. So it makes sense that the center of the sun would essentially be a black hole, right? The feminine, and that's spewing out the eternal light. So, so good.
Yeah.
Yes,
And that's the fun part about this multidimensional stuff because you find out it's not what we
it's
perceive.
not
Because,
up and down.
yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, well, our human eyes, we only see in two dimensions, even though we live in
yeah,
three. It's exactly like a TV screen. We
yeah.
don't see in three dimensions. So when we experience anything outside of that, it's hard for us to do that. But yeah, and my experience with the sun also became personal. At one point, there's some other stuff that happened.
Mm.
Maybe I'll get into that. Anyway, I won't take the time now. But when I was here and my friend showed up. This was early on, and he
Yes.
would show up, and I could, sense he was in that corner of the room, and he'd sort of come through the wall, and then he would just start beaming these telepathic messages and this energy, and I'm blissed out with this crazy energy, and feels like my heart's going to explode and all that. And one day, I don't know who showed up, but somebody said, "Go outside." So
Mm.
I thought the spaceship was going to come, right?
Yes.
So I go outside and
We
it's
can hope. Yeah.
yeah, I go outside and it's a full moon and the moon starts talking to me. I'm like
Wow.
getting these telepathic messages from the moon, and I'm like, "Are you
Mm.
talking to me?"
Mm.
Yes, I'm talking. And it sounds so crazy. And then I started talking to the stars, and then I
Yes.
started talking, and so all of these things are not balls of light.
No.
They are souls.
Yes.
And I'll share this with you, and then I'll throw it back to you. But my mother passed away 10 years ago or so, and we had a very human relationship. One of the first things that happened when I started working with these light beings is a light being showed up and said, "Your mom really wants to talk to you." So,
Mm.
whatever. I wish her well. No, your mom really wants to talk to you and wouldn't leave me alone for days. Your
Mm.
mom really wants to talk to you. So I said, okay, fine. And my mom came and she showed me that she was my daughter. in a previous life.
Wow.
And what had happened is that I, in that life, had gone through so much trauma, I wasn't able to be emotionally there for her.
Wow.
So she wanted to have me as a child. And what ended up happening is that the unconscious resentment came through, and then we had difficulties there. And so there was like I had to heal the wound that I had caused, and she healed the wound. And then she said, I'm going to leave now. This was later on. She said, in other words, we're not going to, because she was coming to me every day and she was just my friend for,
Yeah.
and then she said, I'm going to leave now. And I said, okay, I wish you well. Thank you so much. And then some ETs showed up and astrally asked me to come on their ship. So I did. And they said, we want to show you something. And they took me to way the heck out the other side of the universe, it seemed like. And there was like this nursery of stars.
Oh,
And they said, that star wants to talk to you. Go
yes.
out. So I went, okay. And I went out and I'll try and compose myself.
Mm.
And there was a star, and I said, hi, you want to talk to me? And the star said, yes, I'm your mother. I'm
Wow.
choosing to incarnate as a star. And I was, of course, I'm like, what? How can humans, I'm thinking this to myself, how can
Right.
humans do that? And if that wasn't enough, she goes on to say, she goes on to say, this is my gift to you
Mm.
because I wanted to express to you that outside of our human understanding, you have been this unbelievable inspiration to me for thousands and millions and billions
Mm.
of years and lifetimes. And she said, I want to be that for you. And I'm going to
Mm.
take on the life as a star for you. It's like, this is my gift for you. And it was so mind boggling. And then, of course, I came to find out that all stars communicate with each other. They're like this feminine connection. They all have this, and they have wormholes that they can go and,
Mm.
so when the
Yeah.
sun is out, my mom talks to me.
Mm.
She sends me love, and she's the sun and she's my mother and all
Oh,
these
incredible.
multidimensional things like that. This is, the absolute craziness that
Mm.
I did not expect when I said, I'm going to try talking to extraterrestrials.
Right, right. You're like,
What I
also
would get.
everything will talk to me now.
Yeah. Well, it just reality is absolutely nothing like what I thought.
Yeah.
Nothing, not even
Right.
close. This is
It's,
just the tiniest little video game. And it's
I
just got
was, yes.
ones and zeros. It's just it's not just an illusion, it's a facsimile. It's not even, it's a
Yeah.
video game.
It's pretty flat.
Yeah.
I have a soul memory of being a star as well. This is
You
another
do?
one of
Okay.
my memories.
I need to hear
So
about
I
it.
love this. I love this so much. And actually being a star and the memory that I have with that feels the most like me. That like when I tune into that, I'm like, yeah, that's me. That's me. I am, it just makes sense. It's really funny how it happened too. I ended up on a blind date like before my awakening. It was so weird. And he was like, I'm practicing hypnotization. Do you want me to hypnotize you? The first time I meet this guy, and I'm like, okay, sure, hypnotize me. So I go into this state of hypnotization and he leads me off the planet essentially. And I went and I became a star. And I felt that it was so real. I felt what infinity was. There was no time
Mm,
and everything was joy. And my eternal purpose was just, I was like a pulsing star. And I remember he asked me what color I was, and it was dark blue and light blue, which is very much, I don't know how to describe it. It's a soul color for me, like this midnight blue. And then all I did for eternity was just pulse joy,
mm,
joy,
mhm,
joy, joy. And eternity was like an obvious thing.
mm.
And like I love that I've been able to have that experience of, yeah, of course I'm going to do this. Like forever isn't even a concept. It's just eternity, right?
Yeah.
And I was aware that I had some form of growth and evolution essentially within that, right? So there was some form of expansion within that, but that was my whole purpose, just beaming joy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I heard the call to Earth in that form. I
Oh,
heard the
wow.
call.
So
Yes.
you were a sun pulsing joy and you heard the, so explain the call. What did that entail? Somebody come to you, you felt Earth calling you. What was it?
It's almost like imagine floating in space, pulsing eternal joy, and all of a sudden you hear sort of like a murmur over here. And it was like, huh. And then there's just a knowing there's something going on over there, like a curiosity. I
Mm.
don't know how that translated into this, but I do remember going, huh, Earth. Not in those words, but sort of
Right,
this,
right.
and of course, like I am, oh, hi, I'm almost on it. Huh? No. Dad, I'm actually, we're gonna put this online. This is my dad. Hi, everybody. Hi, Dad. I'm glad we're not live.
That's going in. Still going in.
All right, I'm a human.
Yeah.
Oh, so yeah, actually, in that particular experience, as I was leaving Earth, I met my dad in not human form. He's also very like incredibly masterful, and so that's perfect timing, actually. But anyway, yeah, so yeah, it was just this feeling of like Earth has something going on. Earth was putting the call out and I was curious or like listening somehow. That's what that felt like.
So this might not be concurrent. They could be multiple things happening at the same time. But so do you remember any lifetimes as an Andromedan? You talked about the physical attributes. Are there more than one race of beings in that galaxy? Do you remember what it was like living on planets, et cetera, et cetera?
It's kind of weird to say. I don't have any of those memories. Um, it's almost like the phrase that comes to mind when I think of it is like it's like too hot to touch sort of thing.
Oh yeah, okay.
Meaning at this particular point
Yep,
when and
yep.
even like I've had one channeling of remembering working with the Anunnaki, and it was just so emotionally
Hmm.
intense for me.
Yeah.
And the love that I feel when I tune into the Andromedan frequency and how much I miss this feeling of home, it's like I kind of can't go there, at least not
Yeah,
right now.
yeah, I
Yeah.
understand. Yeah, that was my similar kind of experience for me when I was shown my past lives on Earth. Um, the there was a lot of karma associated with it, and they
Yeah.
were bringing it to my attention so that I could do my job here.
Mm,
So it was incredibly painful. It was very emotionally painful. So I understand what you're talking about. And
yeah.
also just, dimensionally, there's just it doesn't fit. You can't cram that into the brain. It won't fit in there.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Well, we've gone over an hour here. I don't want to take up too much of your time. But I really enjoyed this, and I would love to talk with you again in the future. It sounds like you've got a lot to share, and maybe people will have questions and want to know. And I also want to, get the light being people connected to each other. So
Yeah.
if there's people who might want to reach out to you and make use of your, so tell us again where they can find you.
Yeah, I would say the best place to find me is probably on YouTube and then also my my website. So
Okay.
AllisonHolley.com.
Very good. Do you do any lectures or classes or anything like that?
I do. I have a private online community where I go in and I offer a monthly channeling and teaching, and then some coaching, and that's shifting a little bit in the new year, which is why I'm kind of describing it lightly. But yeah, so I have a really awesome private community. I teach channeling, so I have courses on channeling, conscious creation or manifestation, as many people call it. Um, excuse me. Normally these are edited, so I'm really raw here. And I also do retreats, and I just finished a book tour. So I do a lot of in-person stuff as well.
Very good.
But the retreat coming up is a sexuality retreat. It's called Ecstasy, and it's all about how to activate the ecstatic body and those really powerful waves of energy that you share about, and how to move those through the body, how to function uh, as those are moving through.
Wow.
So,
Sounds beautiful.
yeah, thank you.
Okay. All right. So, yeah, we'll leave it at that for now. And I'd love to talk with you again if you'd be open to that. And I'd like to invite you and all of your friends to come to. We do live guided interdimensional meditations on my channel twice a week, Wednesday and Saturday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. And those are also archived, so if you want to go back and do them. But we are actively changing the world as we're doing these. And the more people that show up, the better. So I invite you all to show. It's free. Anybody can show up.
Incredible.
Yeah.
I'll definitely be there and I'll
Very
share
good.
it. So,
Thank
thank
you.
you. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for everything, my beautiful Andromedan sister. I can't wait to hear more about your path, and I hope we hook up again. I'll let you know and ask if you'd like to continue talking because it's we could probably talk for hours and hours
Yeah.
and hours now.
I noticed that.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Yeah, let's
maybe we
definitely do
should
this.
do it in increments for everybody.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
All right.
All right. Thank you so much.
My privilege. Okay, I'm now going to stop recording.